Hey guys, it's Sebastian from AskSebby, and today we are going to talk about some pretty interesting changes with how American Express is going to market some of their cards. Before we dive in, a big favor is to give this a thumbs up. It does not cost you anything at all, and it's one of the easiest ways to support the channel. So in this video, we're going to talk about everything that we know about this, what it likely means for you, and what it means for some other people. The final little bit is going to be looking into their financials, and we'll talk about all of that, but you might want to stick around. So all of that sounded pretty ominous. What are we even talking about? So from a source at American Express, in the future, the green card, the gold card, and the platinum card, they really don't want to market it as a charge card. On the business side, for the business gold card, pretty much the same idea. They don't want to market this as a charge card. They want you to consider it as a credit card. So that's the first little bit of the change. And the second little bit is that if you do have one of these cards, or if you do consider getting one of them moving forwards, you're automatically going to be enrolled and pay over time. So when I first heard about this, I was a bit skeptical as well. I'll put a link down below in the description box if you want to click through and check yourself. But checking it, it seems like all of my cards from the ones that I mentioned are now enrolled and pay over time. And I specifically remember not enrolling a lot of these cards. Checking my business platinum card, it's not enrolled though, so it does tie into this theory and it seems like it makes sense. We actually got a pretty big hint of this early on when the green card was re-released with all of those new benefits, just because a lot of the publishers had to change their marketing. So they said that it was a charge card, and then American Express messaged them or called them or contacted them telling them, hey, don't call this a charge card, call this a credit card. It really seems like American Express doesn't really want people to consider these charge cards. Side note, if you have yet to like the video, feel free to toss it a thumbs up. So what does all of this mean and how does it impact you? So for a lot of people, and for me, it doesn't really make a difference because most people were using these cards responsibly anyways and they were paying them off in full, meaning that having pay over time enabled doesn't really change anything at all. There is one section where it does kind of negatively affect you if you were using your cards responsibly, and this is going to be the promotions that were involved with this. So oftentimes they end up targeting people who have pretty good payment histories with these promotions, typically with 10,000 points to enroll in this program. I know for me personally, I've gotten almost close to 80,000 or probably almost 100,000 points just from these pay over time offers. Part of that is because I've gone through all of the platinum cards, so the Ameriprise one that is no longer going to exist soon, same with the Mercedes-Benz one, Schwab, Morgan Stanley, the vanilla one, and then a few of the business ones. So I have taken advantage of these offers, and they were probably one of the best things about the pay over time program, for me at least. I'm generally not a fan of paying interest, especially if I'm not making money back. I'll happily take a hit if I'm getting more money back, but otherwise it just doesn't make financial sense. So for the people using their cards responsibly, this is arguably a bad change because now you lost out on these offers. For the people who might have life, because life does come up, then this is arguably a good thing, but at the same time, it's still not really that beneficial just because you could have enrolled yourself after the facts. I guess there's an argument to be made that you typically can't enroll and pay over time until you have had the card for at least a year, so maybe a lot of people who only have had the card for 1 year or less than 1 year might not have had that offer, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not really sure what to think there. I say this in a lot of my videos, but I really want to make sure that you're getting value back. It doesn't really make sense to get 5x back or 4x back or whatever amount back if you're paying 19% interest. I technically think pay over time is a bit less. I think it depends on your profile for all of my cards, whether it's a gold card or whether it's a platinum card. It seems like it's a $10,000 limit. Same thing with my friend's green card, $10,000 limit. The next obvious question is, what does this mean for your credit limits and also for your credit score? So for your credit limits, my understanding is that pay over time is meant to be a limit or a cap for that pay over time amount, but it's not a cap for your charges. So for example, even if you have a pay over time limit of $10,000, you might still end up spending $20,000 within that month. If you're someone who runs businesses, that's not too uncommon if you do have that spend and you're paying it off. So even though you have that pay over time limit, I think that is only going to be for the amounts that you do not pay off at the end of the month. Quick reminder in tangent, so probably 30 seconds, is that there is still technically a cap on the back ends of how much they are comfortable with you charging on that card. So even though there's no limit, there still is kind of a limit. I'm guessing they look at your income, your age, what you're buying, and where you're spending your money, and also the other balances on your other American Express cards and maybe on your other cards based off your credit reports. So unlike a lot of other places, it's not a fixed amount, it's going to be a floating amount based off their algorithm. This makes sense because someone who has a very high income who has a platinum card probably should have a bit more bandwidth compared to a college student who can actually get a platinum card right now. In terms of your credit score, my understanding, and this can obviously change moving forwards, is that it does not affect your utilization. So even though pay over time acts kind of like a credit card, it doesn't affect your credit score the way the other credit cards do. Again, this can obviously change, and we don't really know how they are going to change this if they do want to, but I think it should still be something that you want to pay off. You don't really want to maintain a balance. If that's the case, if you are someone with these high charges, then it might be an interesting use case for charge cards if you do need to maintain it for a short amount of time, if you're doing a renovation or you have some other large expenses. Before we dive into the final bit, if you are someone that wants to learn about these American Express cards, a very easy way to support the channel would be to use the links that are on our website, AskSebby.com, as well as down below in the description box. Make sure that the offers are competitive for you, but otherwise, very easy way to support the channel. So the big elephant in the room and the big question that I was wondering is, why would American Express want to do this? For this, we're going to dive into the Q4 financials. If you want to look at this yourself, the sources are going to be on the top left of the page, and also I'll link to it in a blog post down below. One reminder is that this is not financial advice. This is just me looking at what's publicly available. So one thing that really stood out to me on page 8 is that charge net write-off rates is 1.9% for Q4. If you compare this to last year, you have 1.4%, which is a pretty big jump. At the same time, the 30% past due rate is pretty similar at 1.4 and 1.4. My understanding is that the lending net write-off is what you consider typically your credit card products, and then the charge net write-off was what you considered the charge cards. So we are seeing these net write-offs increase, and my guess is if they are going to have people not pay, they might as well collect interest. So by auto-enrolling people in the Pay Over Time program, it means that they're getting more interest income rather than looking at it as a write-off for delinquencies. Hey, they're supposed to pay these cards in full every single month versus, oh no, they have this Pay Over Time program, so don't worry about it, we're collecting interest. You'll also notice that the provisions for losses, so this is the money that they have set aside for write-offs for people who are defaulting, increased 7% year-over-year growth. It's about $1 billion. And that was going to be on page 9 if you're following along. Page 11, we have the revenue performance, and I've mentioned this a few times in the past, but they make most of their money from discount revenue, so this is going to be from transaction fees from vendors. So pretty much every time you swipe, they make money, and this represents a substantial amount of the revenue. Notice that this only increased by 6% though compared to something like net card fees, and that's going to be the annual fees, and that increased by 20%. Net interest income increased by 12% in case you're curious. My guess, and I haven't really looked too much into this, and I'm not sure if they break all of this down, is that a lot of the annual fee increases or the money they're getting from this is definitely going to be from that gold card. There's a lot of people who message me on Instagram telling me that they got the card because they wanted to flex on people, and the card actually doesn't make any sense for them. So they have this demographic who got the card who aren't necessarily as financially savvy, or who are still at that early stage, who are trying to get better about it, and they want to make more money from them. So they want to collect interest. By auto-enrolling them in this Pay Over Time program, they are kind of winning on both sides. They're not writing off as many people, and they're also making money back while they are using their cards inappropriately. The final chart we're going to look at is going to be on page 12, and that's going to be their foreign exchange adjusted discounts revenue growth. So we can see that it's decreasing from 8%, 7%, 7%, 7%, and down to 6%. You can notice that downward trend, and I wouldn't be surprised if American Express is looking at other ways to monetize the people they already have and the people they're getting. American Express probably has a pretty strong data team given how big of a company they are and how data driven they seem to be. I would not be surprised if this is something that the analysts realize that is a pretty good opportunity for them to make additional money. The other thing to consider is if you look into the news and how they deal with people who don't pay, they do like to chase people down, and I think they're about getting their money back. By not marketing these as charge cards, they're going to be able to get a lot of customers who would otherwise be too afraid to touch these cards due to the fact that you have to pay off these cards in full every single month. Now factor in that most people don't actually pay off their cards in full, and this is a very interesting marketing opportunity. So to summarize, I think the reason they're doing this is because it's an opportunity to make money, collecting interest on people who might have otherwise defaulted based off how charge cards typically work, and also it's a way to get new customers who otherwise would not touch charge cards. Definitely an interesting move, and I guess we'll see how it works in the long term. We'll probably come back to this video in a few years and see whether it actually worked, and maybe we'll see if the financial performance increased due to it. On that note, if you are someone who wants to learn about these cards, a very easy way to do that would be links down below or the ones on our website, AskSebby.com. Just make sure the offers are competitive. My question for you guys is, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think it's a good thing? Do you think it's a bad thing? Do you think they'll make more money from it? Let me and the community know in the comments down below. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. It really helps us out. If you know anyone else who'd benefit from what we just talked about, share this with them. It'll probably help them out. But otherwise, hope you guys liked it. See you guys next time.